Inside the Apostolic Palace on the night of October 30th, 1503, something happened that shook the Christian world so deeply that history still hesitates when speaking its name. Beneath vaulted ceilings meant to honor the divine, beneath frescoes painted as hymns to heaven, 50 naked courtesans crawled across freezing marble while cardinals stood paralyzed, their silence heavier than incense smoke. And at the center, laughing softly as if witnessing a private joke carved in sin, sat Pope Alexander VI. What the witnesses saw that night was only the first shudder of a descent no prayer could halt. The true nightmare had not yet begun. This is the story of Lucrezia Borgia, a woman trapped within a dynasty where ambition devoured blood, faith, and dignity alike. A woman whose wedding night became one of the darkest stains ever etched into Vatican stone. If forbidden history draws you in, and tell us where you're watching from once the moment arrives that unsettles you most. Let's begin. In the autumn of 1503, the bells of St. Peter's rang across Rome carrying news that spread like a storm. Lucrezia Borgia, twice widowed under shadows that never lifted, would marry again. But unlike her previous unions, this ceremony would unfold inside the Vatican itself, beneath sacred symbols, beneath the eyes of a pope who twisted sanctity into leverage. Her groom, Alfonso d'Este, heir to Ferrara. To Italy, it was a brilliant alliance. To Alfonso, it felt like a death sentence written with polite ink. Lucrezia's past was infamous. Her first husband fled Rome claiming assassins chased him. Her second, whom she loved, was strangled on Vatican steps, rumors swirling straight toward her brother Cesare Borgia. Now another Alfonso was being bound to their bloodline, and all of Italy whispered the same thing. He won't survive this. Alfonso tried everything: delays, diplomacy, pleas. But Alexander VI tolerated no disobedience. Messengers rode to Ferrara day and night bearing one simple threat: accept this marriage or be destroyed. Cesare's armies had erased cities. Excommunication would erase the Est name. To resist was suicide. And so the young heir rode toward Rome knowing he was marching into a gilded trap. Meanwhile, in her Vatican apartments, Lucrezia stared out over the city with an expression older than her 21 years. Europe painted her as a seductress, a poisoner, a schemer. But those truly near her knew the truth. She wasn't the mastermind, she was the collateral, a daughter used as a political weapon by a father and brother whose ambitions swallowed everyone around them. Her first marriage discarded like worn parchment. Her second husband murdered before her eyes. Sleepless nights twisting her awake in silent terror. She knew this marriage would not bring love, but she did not yet know what her wedding night would become. Preparations thickened the air with unease. Servants avoided eye contact. Cardinals whispered in corners. Strange men slipped through forbidden corridors. Rumors of secret instructions, hidden entrances, guests smuggled under moonlight. And Johann Burchard, master of ceremonies, felt dread he couldn't shake. He'd witnessed scandal after scandal under Alexander: bribes, feasts, simony, sin dressed in silk. But something about this night chilled him. He sensed he was about to record an event that history would whisper with trembling lips. When Alfonso entered Rome that December, nothing prepared him for the Vatican. A fortress of stone and shadow, half holy, half monstrous. Inside, Alexander VI glowed in white and gold. Beside him, Cesare stood silent, deadly. Cities surrendered at his approach. Entire lineages vanished at a gesture. When his eyes met Alfonso's, the message was simple: you are not among friends. Over the following weeks, humiliation became routine. At feasts, Alfonso was seated beside courtesans while cardinals grinned behind their goblets. On hunts, Cesare demonstrated his prowess with cold intent, each kill a warning. At receptions, Alexander made cheerful remarks about Lucrezia's dead husbands, as if discussing weather. Every moment whispered the same thing: you belong to us. Meanwhile, beneath the palace, a different preparation unfolded. Cesare personally selected 50 of the most beautiful courtesans in Rome, refined women who mingled with nobles, now trembling as they learned what the Pope demanded. Silk gowns they'd later strip from their bodies. Jewelry they'd be forced to drop to marble. They were escorted through hidden tunnels, lanterns flickering against damp walls, brought into chambers where prayers had no power. Servants crossed themselves, whispering that something sacrilegious was rising in the Holy See. Even Lucrezia sensed it. Faces she didn't recognize appeared near her rooms. Courtesans drifted through halls like phantoms. Cesare moved with an eerie satisfaction. The night before the wedding, suffocating beneath invisible weight, she fled to the Sistine Chapel and collapsed beneath Michelangelo's painted creation. She prayed for rescue, any rescue, but heaven remained silent. October 30 arrived in blinding splendor. Bells thundered. Crowds filled Rome. Lucrezia, radiant in gold-embroidered silk, looked into a mirror and saw not a bride but a sacrifice painted in pearls. The ceremony unfolded with ritual precision. Alexander VI officiated himself, his voice booming through the chapel while cardinals stood in rigid lines, faces carved into masks of obedience and dread. They knew the Borgia reputation. They knew this was only the beginning. Afterward, the feast began inside the Borgia apartments, halls glowing with frescoes of saints now forced to witness what followed. Tables overflowed with meat, fruit, wine. Diplomats, nobles, clergy, all trapped in a celebration that felt like a masquerade hiding something vile beneath. At first, the banquet played out like any grand event. Music, toasts, hollow diplomacy. Then the atmosphere twisted. Alexander's laughter sharpened. Cesare rose slowly. A signal. The doors slammed shut. Guards stepped forward, hands on swords. No one would leave. The true feast was about to begin. The side doors opened. 50 courtesans stepped into the hall, velvet robes, jeweled necks, terror-filled eyes. The room drowned in silence. Alexander rose and declared the night's entertainment. At his command, the courtesans stripped themselves bare, silk falling like shed skins onto cold marble. A cathedral meant for prayer now watched a vision ripped from a nightmare. Cardinals crossed themselves frantically. Some tried to flee, guards blocked them. Lucrezia froze, Alfonso stared in horror, and then Alexander ordered the women to dance. Servants raised towering candelabras, flames contorting their shadows across frescoed saints who looked down in painted agony. But the Pope wasn't finished. Baskets of chestnuts were brought forth and scattered across the floor. The nuts rolled wildly as Alexander announced the next humiliation. The women were to crawl on all fours between the legs of nobles and clergy, gathering chestnuts like animals in a grotesque contest. The one who collected the most would receive treasures from the papal vault. Even Burchard, hardened by Rome's darkest habits, later wrote that words failed him. But the night had only descended halfway. Midnight approached. Alexander ended the chestnut banquet. Broken courtesans huddled in corners. Cardinals trembled in guilt. Wine drenched the tables like spilled blood. Then Alexander issued the command that obliterated the last boundary between sin and absolute corruption. The marriage had to be proven, not privately, not discreetly, but publicly, before every witness present, and not once 3 times. Cesare himself stared at his father in shock. Alfonso rose, pale as bone. Refusal meant death. Acceptance meant destruction. Surrounded by armed guards, he had no choice. He turned to Lucrezia, her eyes empty, her spirit already gone. They were escorted into an adjoining chamber, doors left wide open, the witnesses forced to watch the consummation of a marriage twisted into brutality. What followed was not union. It was obliteration. A ritual of power disguised as sacrament. A violation branded into 2 lives that would never recover. By dawn, as pale light crawled across the palace, Alexander demanded the 3rd and final proof. Cesare supervised coldly. When it ended, he announced the marriage sealed in the eyes of God and law unchallengeable. Alexander toasted the night with satisfaction. Behind him lay ruins. Cardinals stood shattered. Guards stared at the floor in shame. Courtesans curled in exhaustion. Chestnuts crushed beneath their knees. In the adjoining chamber, Lucrezia lay motionless, staring at nothing. Alfonso trembled at her side, broken past words. Days later, he fled Rome and never spoke of the night again. But the story escaped. Rumors bled across Italy. Ambassadors wrote frantic reports. The Venetian envoy declared the event surpassed even Rome's darkest ancient nightmares. Preachers seized it as proof of decay, one monk especially, Martin Luther. Years later, he cited the Borgia feast as the symbol of a Vatican rotting from within. Burchard wrote everything in his diary, hands shaking. His account nearly vanished under Vatican secrecy, but centuries later it resurfaced, too vivid, too monstrous to bury. Lucrezia tried to find peace in Ferrara, funding charities, protecting artists, but sorrow clung to her like a second shadow. Her marriage healed only on the surface. Inside, nothing ever did. She died at 39, giving birth, whispering, "I am ready to be free at last." Alexander VI died months after the banquet, rumors claiming poison, his favorite weapon, finally found him. Cesare died in a lonely ambush, body abandoned in mud. But the night of October 30, 1503 did not die with them. It ignited the Reformation. It scarred the Church. It became a warning etched into time, because the darkest crimes are not always born in shadows. Sometimes they unfold beneath sacred ceilings. If you've reached the end, comment boo, so we know you walked through the entire descent. And remember, the past is never dead. It watches, it warns.